Alrighty, chat. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder. Oh, top button is unbuttoned. Let's go ahead and fix that. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purpose. This feels too tight. Okay, we're going to leave it unbuttoned. But to start the disclaimer again, welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that although I am a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And so if y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. Yes, today we are going to do a striptease stream. No, we're going to switch the category over to hot tubs and other things. No, but seriously, today we've got a super cool stream that we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking to a couple about relationship issues. This is not couples therapy. We're just going to be talking to them. So much like the rest of the content that we do here on stream, our hope is that by giving y'all an insight into other people who are struggling with things that you may be struggling with, it is easy for you to understand those problems. So if we look at why is it hard for us to understand our own problems? Because our problems are in our head. And if they're in our head, what that sort of means is that it's hard for us to see them objectively. So if we look at someone else who has our problem and we can hear their thinking and hear their challenges and see how they overcome it, we can, interestingly enough, benefit from that experience. That's the whole idea of what we do here on stream. That is also what we try to do in places like group coaching. So we've sort of noticed that, and there's data to support this, that sort of having a group of people who share similar problems is effective at helping sort of everyone solve their problems. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is exactly the kind of stuff that we're going to we emphasize and people learn over the course of 12 weeks of group coaching, which is how to listen, how to really understand someone else's perspective, how to practice speaking. And I know that y'all may say like, yeah, I know how to speak to people, which is totally fair, right? But to be a very thoughtful listener, to self-examine your own experience within a relationship or within a dialogue is like really, really helpful. So if y'all are interested in getting kind of a piece of what we're doing here today, and if y'all in general want to be better at listening in relationships and stuff like that, so being better at relationships, then I think group coaching is a good fit. So just to give y'all a couple of examples of what we're talking about. So if you look at success in a relationship, part of it is listening, but part of it is also understanding your own feelings and being able to effectively communicate what your feelings are while still maintaining empathy for someone else's perspective. And if we sort of look at that, that's actually really hard to do, right? And like, because if you're feeling hurt, it's very hard to be empathic. And so those kinds of skills, and you may wonder, like, how does that translate over into group coaching? I'll give y'all a very simple example. Should I be speaking right now? Am I speaking too much? How do I know what is the right amount of speaking to do in a situation? And if y'all are even struggling to sort of find your place in social situations, I know that I used to kind of struggle with this, which is like, I don't know how much I'm supposed to be talking right now. And since I'm so considerate for other people, there's an engaging conversation, and now I'm sort of left out of it. And then at the end of that conversation, they all make plans to hang out, and they've sort of bonded, but I'm kind of like left out. And so what I should have done is insert myself into the conversation, but that feels really awkward. Oh my God. And so that's the kind of stuff that you will literally learn in group coaching, where the coach is going to be responsible for keeping track of who's speaking and who's not, but they won't call on you. What they're going to do is force the group to call on you or teach you how to insert yourself into a conversation without it being perceived poorly. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, definitely check out group coaching, and let's hop into our interview. Are people's propensity for loneliness stemming from a lack of positive socialization at a young age? That is absolutely a piece of it. Hello, my friend. Okay, let me just fix this real quick. And thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having us.
Okay. Welcome, y'all. So let's start with, what do y'all go by?
So my name is Leo.
Okay.
I'm comfortable going by Leo.
I'm Alex.
Okay. Nice to meet you both, Leo and Alex. And what are we going to be... Thank you so much for coming. I don't know if you guys... Did y'all catch the last time we did this? It was like well over a year ago.
Yeah, well, so I'm pretty familiar with your
Okay.
videos and your content and stuff. I don't think Alex has seen any.
Oh my God,
Um, I've
Alex.
kind I've kind of described, yeah, they're being very brave right now. Um, I've described like whenever I would watch certain videos, especially about like um, relationships and like BPD and things like that,
Uh-huh.
I would kind of like explain the things that I learned, um, and we would talk about it and like if something would be helpful or not, and then we had some conversations about it, but that's about all the exposure that Alex has gotten.
Oh
I've
my God,
watched
Alex. Thank you so
videos.
much for coming here. And thank you so much for putting yourself in a confusing and uncomfortable situation for everybody else's benefit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so just to give y'all, and so what's your understanding of what we're going to be doing today?
So I think so. I've seen one of those. I've seen one of your scenes before where you're talking to a couple, and you kind of talk to them both individually,
Mhm.
and then have them both come in at the end. I think that was a pretty good way to like talk about that. So
Okay.
that was my understanding about how this is going to go. But I have no idea if maybe you had something planned different or.
Sure. And Alex, do you have a sense of like, what are we talking about today?
I'm just kind of going with the flow.
Okay.
I thought it sounded like a good idea to, Leo mentioned that it might help people to kind of talk about our experiences, and I thought that was a great idea. So,
Awesome. Perfect. So yeah, so I think y'all are spot on, and it sounds like we're all on the same page. So I'll just kind of clarify a little bit about what I'm sort of envisioning. So we're here to understand a little bit about relationship dynamics. So if there is something in particular that y'all want to talk about, or there's some sort of tension or challenge within your relationship, we can absolutely focus on that. And the way that we approach that is I'd love to hear from kind of the two of y'all together for like just a couple minutes. And then we'll spend half an hour talking to each of you individually to sort of get your perspective of what this experience is like. And then when we come back together, we'll sort of see if there's something that we can learn from each other, or if there's some progress to be made. Does that work?
Yep,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Okay, so what is there something in particular that y'all wanted to talk about today or focus on?
I think nothing in particular, but I think that we definitely have a unique, like I would say that our relationship is pretty unique.
Okay.
In
What-
that, sorry.
What makes it unique?
So about was it about a year ago now?
about a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, about a year, 2 years ago, Alex was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
They've since gone through. I mean, I don't want to explain for you.
Well, I've gone through DBT, CBT, both of those types of therapy. I've done a lot since I was diagnosed, and doing that has created a very like interesting dynamic of how we approach problems with each other, how we discuss certain things, because it's not that like my brain doesn't work, it's just that I see things completely different than Leo might. So it's a lot of like communication, like being patient with one another, and trying to look at things objectively. So it's not just like I have an issue with this or Leo has an issue with this. It's like we should look at this together and see what we can do and understand each other in this moment.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like y'all have put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that it is. Okay. Well, that and also that it sounds like y'all still have challenges.
Occasionally, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've worked like a lot of kinks out, but yeah, we do have like the occasional like challenge. Yeah.
And I noticed that you used they to refer to Alex. Can you help me understand what they means?
Would you like to?
I go by she or they pronouns.
Okay.
Leo usually just refers to me as they.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter though. Like on stream, it's fine using either.
Okay. And so the reason I was asking is because sometimes they can have to do, sometimes that has to do with gender identity, and sometimes it has to do with like multiple personalities or, things like that. So I was just trying to understand. Okay. And so is there something in particular that y'all still find kind of challenging?
That's a good question. Whenever I think of challenges in our relationship, I don't really think of something in particular.
Okay.
No, nothing like specific. There are just when both of us, when like tensions are high with like we both have a lot going on, or I go to school full time and I work and Leo works full time. So there are like weeks where it's just back to back to back for both of us. And it'll be something minor like one of us forgot to feed the cat, or, you know, something very small that kind of just makes everything like collapse, kind of like a house of cards.
Okay. Okay.
And even then, we try to work it out as best we can with, you know, patience and understanding.
Of course. Awesome. So let's maybe like look into that and see if there's something to be learned. Who wants to go first? Or actually, do you have questions for me?
I don't think so.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
You go first.
Okay, yeah, I'll go first.
Okay. So Alex, no watching stream.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go.
You can always watch it later, but not right now.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Leo. So tell me, man, what's it like being in a relationship with Alex?
It's great, honestly. We first connected in high school, but it didn't quite work out. Also, I think a lot of that confusion was Alex was not diagnosed yet and wasn't really. They thought that they were, not to say that they're not normal, but I guess objectively, you know, they weren't quite. They understood that they were operating and understanding emotions on like a normal person, just normal human level, like standard, which caused confusion for both of us, and it was pretty hectic. So
okay.
we didn't really work out in high school, but we met back together like almost more than 2 years ago, and since then, I think our 2-year anniversary is coming up in November. So.
Okay, cool. Congratulations, man. And,
Thank you.
And how? Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 21.
Okay.
Alex is going to be 22 tomorrow.
Okay, so it sounds like you guys started dating when you were like 19, so soon after high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you said that, like when y'all kind of, so it sounds like y'all were attracted to each other in high school.
Yeah.
And you said that things caused confusion. What does that mean?
So there was a lot of, it was, it was difficult because Alex had a boyfriend, and he was not the best. I remember you talked about in one of your streams about how people with borderline tend to pair with people who are narcissists. And I wouldn't say that, I'm not saying that he was diagnosed, I have no idea, but he definitely showed some traits of that kind of thing.
Sure.
He was very toxic, very abusive. And I think at the time I kept trying to convince them, I was like, hey, listen, like, I'm not trying to steal you, like, but this person is like not good for you. And I gave them an ultimatum at the time, which at the time, if I had known, like, ultimatums weren't, I don't think ultimatums were really the solution at the time, but I had no idea about, you know, Alex's, you know, EPD at the time. But I gave them ultimatum. I was like, you have to choose, like, either you're going to stay with this person or you're, you know, or you're not.
Well, I'm confused. How is that an ultimatum?
Well, because to me, it seemed like they told me that they had like broken up with their boyfriend, but he wasn't really understanding that. But they were still being like a couple. Like, it seemed like Alex was confused about it, which made me confused about it. And I was like, listen, like, I need to make a decision here of like, either you need to like figure this out, or like I'm gone.
I see.
Right?
So the ultimatum has to do with you leaving.
Yes.
I see. Okay. And you said you weren't trying to steal them away?
Well, okay. So I didn't want them to think that my intention was just like, oh, let me manipulate you to think that your boyfriend is bad, so that way I can take you away. It was more of like, I'm recognizing that like this guy is like being really hurtful and like awful, and like I wouldn't even need to, you know, have you as a relationship, but this is like, you know, this isn't good for you, this is dangerous. But I guess you know, in a way I was, I guess, stealing her or trying to steal her away.
I mean,
but
sounds
it wasn't
like it, right?
Yeah, but I just didn't want her to think that I was like trying to manipulate her to leave, you know, like I was.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what I'm hearing, that just because you were trying to, I mean, so it sounds like you were into her.
Yeah.
right? Okay, so fair enough. And that the main thing that you were sort of pointing out is that there can be two things that are independent and true at the same time. One is that you are in a bad relationship, and the second is I want a relationship with you. Third is it sounds like there was some kind of weird tension because there was an ultimatum, but it sounds like what you were really concerned about is just because you wanted a relationship with her doesn't mean that you are lying, manipulating, or inflating how toxic her existing relationship is. Those two things can be independently true.
Yeah, but at the time I had a really hard time communicating that.
Okay. And so what was y'all's relationship like at that time?
At the time we were just in senior year of high school, so we were just, I didn't have a license, they did, so occasionally after school they'd just be like, hey, I got to do some errands, do you want to come with me? And then we would just we would go do errands, we would we would go get lunch, go get some some ice cream or something, just things like that. And we like to spend, anytime we had classes together, we would just spend those classes together. And we just try to spend a lot of time with each other. There was some romance, but it wasn't I wouldn't say it was a fully romantic, kind of into each other. It was just kind of I guess a testing ground, you could say.
Can you tell me a little bit about the romance?
There was a time, it was the night, I think it was the night before, we were on Thanksgiving break. It was the night before Thanksgiving, and we got some food. It was late at night. It was midnight or something. We got some food and we were in our car and we were just making out, and that was just it.
Nice.
And we ended up I felt like a high school in a movie, right? High school in a movie. But we ended up just sleeping, not sleeping with each other, just knocking out, right? And they didn't get home till 4 or 5 a.m. And when their parents found out that they got home, they just kicked them out. And
oh my God.
Yeah, they left them out the door. I think it was raining and Alex was cold. My parents are very lenient, but their mom was not. Their dad was letting them in and was hey, it's okay, we can talk about it, whatever. But as soon as Alex came in, got out of the shower, their mom screamed at them and kicked them out. And that was really rough because I felt really guilty for that. And that's when I started understanding the relationship dynamic with them and their mom.
Okay.
And their parents in general.
Wow, that was such a epic story until that. That sounds rough. So it sounds like you really tried to support her or them for an extended period of time. And then what ended up happening with the narcissistic boyfriend?
So after I was hey, you need to figure this out or I'm leaving, and they weren't quite figuring it out yet, so I let go of the fling. They stayed with their boyfriend for another year, maybe.
So you guys
year
stopped
and a half.
being friends?
We didn't stop being friends, no. But we stopped that thing.
Stop the romantic stuff.
Yes.
I see. So the ultimatum was around the romance, not about the friendship.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I still wanted to be there to support them. I wasn't oh, let me leave you to your abusive boyfriend and not have any support. Right? So yeah, they stayed together for another year and year and a half. COVID really complicated things because we lost communication for a while. So I had no idea about the relationship status at all. But they continued to be with them for a while.
Wait, so you guys remained friends, but you didn't talk to them for a year or two? A year and a half?
Yeah, we didn't really. Once COVID happened, it was so sudden. We had plans to go out that week, but then everything happened, and we were just and by go out, I mean we had friends. It was a group activity.
But you guys didn't text or DM each other on Discord? Or...
Not at all. No. I think at the time I was also still, although I was friends with them, I was still feeling a little, because I felt heartbroken.
Of course.
It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I was confused about the. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt I still wanted to be their friend to support them, but I was I think I also need to treat myself to some distance, and
okay,
maybe this COVID thing is it can help me in a way.
Okay,
it can be a good excuse for me to grow.
Sure. Sure. Okay. And then how did y'all end up reconnecting?
They made a post on Twitter, I think, about their friends it was either like they weren't inviting them to something, or like they kicked them out, or they just weren't being good friends. And I messaged them and I was like, hey, you're over in, this city, right? Because, they go to school around this area. And I was like, you're in the city, right? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, well, I plan on being like, around there because I'm going to like a concert. If you want to like, hang out, like we could, do something like hang out, whatever. Because I was like, I want to know what's going on with their shitty friends. Like, so, sorry, can I curse on here? Is that okay?
Yeah, you do you, bro.
So after that, so for a few days we were communicating, and then I went to that concert I was going to, and then I drove over to their city, and they were staying in the dorm, and I just kind of hung out with them in their dorm mate, and that's how we first reconnected.
And then when did y'all end up starting to date, or what did that look like?
So they started like over the weekends. They would come over. They would drive over to my city, and because this is where they originally live, right?
Okay.
So they would come over to where I was living, and they would, we would go hang out. We would go out, like get lunch, like talk, just spend time together like we were friends again. It was really cool. But then they started opening me about like, I wasn't asking about their boyfriend at the time because I wanted to let them bring it up first. And eventually they did, and it was still like toxic. He was still bad. And, I think we both realized that this like same thing was happening again.
Same thing meaning romance between the two?
Like the romance, yeah. I think we noticed that the same thing was happening again. And I was like, this time I was very much like, in my mind, I was like, I learned this lesson already. So I was being I put up like a bulwark, and I was like, listen, like, we need to figure this out again because I can't be going in loops like this all the time. And, I don't exactly quite remember how it all happened, but eventually one day they were like, yeah, I'm done. And so they were like, hey, breaking up with you. They blocked him on everything. And for a while he kept trying to message them, and they were responding, and we were like romantically involved. So it made me really uncomfortable. And for a while, that was our biggest issue. But that was the very beginning of our relationship. And that was like a really big issue for us, is like the fact that they were still communicating. It wasn't that I was worried or jealous, or like, it wasn't that I was worried about him taking them back or like jealous about it. It was just like, it really frustrates me, and it feels like disrespectful. Like at the time, that's what it felt like to me.
What's disrespectful about it?
I think what was disrespectful about it was like, I was like, hey, listen, this guy isn't good for you. And they agreed with me. And I was like, you can't be talking to them, because I'm not trying to be controlling, but I feel like if you keep talking to this person, it's going to just get worse. Like, they're a manipulative person, and like, I'm worried about you, and like, I feel like it would be better for our relationship if you guys just didn't talk. And they were like, you're right. And so it felt like we agreed on something, but it wasn't being followed through at the time.
I see. So the disrespect is that they agreed to something and then didn't follow through with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Why aren't you trying to be controlling?
I mean, do you mean that like, does that question mean what part of that isn't controlling? Is that what that question means?
No, I mean, why aren't you trying to be controlling? Why not be more controlling?
Because I think my worry at the time was they just came out of this relationship with like a manipulative person who was probably controlling them for a majority of their relationship. And it's like, what if I fall into that same trap? It's like, I don't want to be another manipulative, controlling person. I want to give them the space and the freedom to make their own decisions, So I didn't want to force them to like do a certain thing. But
yeah, but sometimes the decisions they make are bad.
Yeah, well, at the time, I wasn't necessarily confident in my own decisions fully, right?
Okay.
I've had some relationships, but it wasn't very, I wasn't super experienced with like being in a relationship with someone, so.
Okay.
I was learning myself too,
Yeah, so I hear a lot of humility there that's like healthy and stuff like that, but just like between me, you, and the internet, like it sounds like sometimes there were bad decisions being made, and you sort of really felt very strongly that you kind of knew what the right move is.
Hmm.
And that I'm hearing you being really conflicted about recognizing that there is an unhealthy pattern, but also like you're not him, right? I mean, we don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you're narcissistic too, and we just don't know it. But I'm not really getting that vibe from you. What I'm really hearing is conflict between I shouldn't be controlling and also like this is clearly not going to end well. We've tried to play this game before and it doesn't end well, and like there needs to be some kind of because you do exert pressure, right?
Like back then or like now?
Back then.
Yeah, I guess I was.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to call you out and say that even that it's bad. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
We have this assumption that sometimes being controlling as a partner is bad, and that sometimes it is bad, but sometimes part of being in a healthy relationship is that someone pushes you in ways that you don't necessarily want to be pushed for your benefit, which can be something as simple as, hey, break up with this toxic person who's toxic. Or it can be like you need to eat like one serving of vegetables with your dinner and I'm being controlling, but like heart health is important, you know? And so what are things like, thank you so much. Leo, how are you feeling about this? Am I painting you out to be an asshole? Are you
No,
okay?
no.
Cool.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm trying for some reason. I feel like I'm trying to be, um, I don't know. For some reason, I feel like I'm trying to be careful with my words. I think it's because of the just stream, like maybe
Yeah,
just
of course. Yeah.
people thinking of me the wrong way. But I think I'm trying to just let go of trying to be careful with my words so much.
That's okay. You can be careful. I'll poke them apart.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
like I'll just point out to you something that I've already noticed. So you were very concerned about how she perceived your behavior, right? You
Yeah.
didn't want to come across as manipulative. Same thing is probably active here, where you're careful about how you want to be perceived, which is normal.
Yeah.
What do you want us to think about you?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice, understanding person. A good boyfriend.
You're nice, understanding, respectful. You know. Yeah, and I think we think all those things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So and what have things been like over the last year or so?
They've been pretty good. So I think the tricky part of that question is the beginning of that year, very different from the end of that year.
Okay.
Right. Them going through therapy, very different from finishing therapy.
Okay. How so?
So the beginning was, at the time, I think a lot of it, whenever they would finish their therapy sessions, I would be like, hey, how'd it go? Like, first of all, I was like, if you don't feel comfortable sharing something with me, that's fine. But I was like, hey, how'd it go? Like, did you learn anything? Whatever. I wanted to talk to them about it. And half the time, maybe even more than that, they were like, I don't know, or not really. They felt like they weren't really, to me, I got the impression they weren't getting anything from it.
Okay.
And like the therapist had assigned them homework to do. And a lot of times they either didn't do it until the very end or just didn't do it at all. And I was like, maybe this isn't, maybe this isn't working. But I wasn't saying that to them. I want them to figure it out, right? But eventually one day they came to me after a therapy session and they were like, well, I'm done. And I was like, oh, really? And like I said, that was only half the time where they didn't really share much. But I think they didn't know how to express it, but they actually were learning a lot about themselves.
Okay.
Because it went from understanding nothing about themselves to knowing a whole lot more. I mean, even knowing anything at all about BPD is more than nothing.
Of course.
So I think it really did help them out. And I noticed afterwards, whenever we would have a lot of arguments or like discussions, they would catch themselves and be like, this is why I'm upset. Whereas before there was a serious lack of communication of like, they're upset at me and I don't know why. Like they're upset. I'm like, hey, can you tell me why I'm upset at you? And they would go, you should know. And they would have a lot of those really quick kind of nasty remarks where they would be like, you should know, or like, I don't want to talk to you, or I can't believe you did that. And they were very, very vague, very sharp, very like aggressive with that. But they toned that down a lot after a while. It was a lot of like patience and understanding, and like, I don't want to yell back at them, even though I'm really frustrated right now. Like they would say something that I felt was really like hurtful, but I would be like, let me just internalize like my feelings right now and not explode and just let me just like take the punches and then talk to them later. Um, and that's
Okay.
kind of like, and that sounds like a lot. That maybe this sounds like they were being really like, I don't want to make them sound like they were being abusive or anything. It was just a lot of times they were like, um, yeah, they just had these, it was just that part of their personality coming out. And it was like, I want to understand and be patient and be helpful. So let me just back off and then come back later. Because, you know, they would calm down later and talk to me and be like, hey, listen, I know that wasn't fair of me. Like, you know, I love you, like I care about you, it's, and then we would reconcile those things. So,
Okay. And what where is y'all's relationship now?
I think it's much better than it used to be for sure. I think it's very good. I think a lot of times what it what our disagreements come down to um, is either I think I think a lot of it is me being irresponsible in some ways. Um, like they're like hmm, I think a lot of it is I'm being irresponsible or I maybe am not doing like things around the apartment that maybe I should be doing. Um, and then they come to me about that and they get frustrated. Or um, they will tell me that I need to do something and then I push it off and I totally forget it even was a request. Like I totally forget it even happened. And they come back to me like it just happened. Like apparently like, months ago they told me they were like, "Hey, I think there are some wasps like in our like balcony, like in the closet balcony." And I was like, "Oh, okay, we should try and figure that out." And then just a couple days ago, they were like, "Hey, the wasps are like really bad. Like, I remember I asked you to like figure something out about it, and you never did." And then it came to me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that totally blanked from my memory. Like, I totally forgot that was even a thing. You're right. Like, I messed up." Um, and um, I've been having issues with like, I feel like I've been having issues with attention. Like, sometimes I feel like we're having discussions and we're talking, right? Just like a normal talk after work, especially after work when I'm like tired. We'll be talking after work and we're having a whole conversation. I'm like responding adequately. I'm like, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that sucks, or oh, that's good. And then afterwards, they're like, what did I just talk about? And I'm like, I have no idea. Um, and I've been catching that a lot, and that causes a lot of frustration to them, and it makes them feel like I'm not listening to them. And maybe I'm not listening to them, but honestly, that kind of thing's been happening a lot, and I don't really know why. Like, I don't know what's wrong. At the time, I was just contributing into, oh, I'm tired after work. Maybe my mind just isn't processing things. But it was never like that before. So now it feels like they're talking to me or they'll tell me things and they'll talk to me about it later, and I have no idea what they're talking about. They'll be like, hey, do you remember when I talked about this the other day? And I'm like, no. And then they get mad and they don't want to talk to me anymore. They shut down because it feels like I'm not listening to them. And maybe I'm not. I have no idea what's really going on there, but I feel like I have a really bad issue with memory and attention lately, and I think that's been causing a lot of issues.
Do you have problems with attention or memory in other situations?
Um, I have a hard time reading. Like if I'm reading a book, um, before I get to the end of the page, my eyes have watered like 3 times. I don't know if that's like a normal thing. I always have to reread lines all the time because like it feels like my vision gets blurry. I zone out, and I even start sleeping, and then I'm like, oh, I'm reading a book, and I go back to it. Um, I feel like the only time like, and I think even at work too. Like if at work, if I'm doing a certain task, but one of them is out of order, like I'll do things in a certain way every time. But if something is out of order, I like completely fall apart. I don't know what to do anymore. Like I slow down.
And the
Um,
and the not paying attention and losing track of what they say, is that something that's been relatively recent?
yeah, I would say that's been happening only in the past couple months or so. That was never a thing before.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a hard question. You ready for it, Leo?
Okay.
Is what they say boring?
Um, it might be. I don't know.
Is
Like
it
I don't want to say
fatiguing to listen to?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think maybe there are times where either my what I'm thinking is either there are some times where I need more stimulation in a conversation or less. And those are the times where I don't pay attention. Um, but I'm not really sure. I think uh, maybe it is boring to my brain because, like I said, I'm coming up with these automatic responses. Like I'm like, mm-hmm, yeah, right, and I'm saying these things without really listening or understanding, but I'm also not in the moment cognizant that I'm not listening and understanding. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, and is there something in the relationship that you wish she would do differently or they would do differently?
Um, I don't know. It's hard to say because to me this feels like a 100% me thing. So I have no idea.
Uh, yeah. Why do you think it feels like it's 100% you think?
Because there's a chance that maybe they're right, that maybe I'm just like not listening. But I feel like I really do try, and there are some things that I do remember. Like I'll remember like their friends' names, what they have done with those friends. Like I feel like in certain ways I have excellent memory, and in other ways
Theo,
it's like
I'm
completely
gonna
gone.
ask again. Is there a chance that what they're saying is not worth listening to?
I honestly I couldn't tell you because I don't remember,
Okay.
right? So
So I know it sounds kind of weird, but like, so here's what I'm noticing is that there's a lot of like responsibility and carefulness on your part. So like what I'm hearing is nothing but positivity when it comes to your partner, and like a very high awareness of like your negativity. So you don't want to be manipulative. You don't want to, you want to respect boundaries. You want to do this. You want to do that. You have a lot of compassion for your partner. Of course, they've gone through a lot of stuff. They had a rough upbringing. All that kind of stuff is true. And I'm also getting kind of a vibe of, they did the work. I'm getting it like, so who do you think has worked harder to make this relationship work?
um, if I'm speaking honestly, I think me. I think a lot of it was on me. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that?
Um, for a while, I had a hard time reconciling it because it felt unfair. Um,
Right. And then what did you do to reconcile it?
Nothing.
Well, I
Absolutely
mean,
nothing.
you don't seem upset about it now. So what
Um,
happened to your frustration or your sense of unfairness?
um, I think I still have a looming sense of unfairness. Sometimes I think the unfairness hasn't gone away since like day one. But the reason why the funny thing is that it doesn't feel fair for it to feel unfair to me
Very good.
because I also recognize that they've done a lot of work and they try to understand. And it seems like most of the times when we have arguments or discussions, it's them being mad at me. So like I must have done something wrong. So how is it unfair if it's me causing the issues? You know, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, so I'm hearing a lot of internal conflict. So on the one hand, you used to feel like things were unfair. Where did those feelings go?
Uh, I don't know.
Did you tell her that things feel unfair?
No, never.
Never.
Well, okay, there were some times in specific discussions that we had about like our feelings and things like that where I was like I felt like you were being unfair in this specific instance, but I've never described the like feeling of unfairness throughout the relationship. I've never described that feeling because I'm afraid of how that conversation will go.
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid that I'm afraid that they'll start thinking that they're a bad partner, um, and that they're going to think things like, it's going to be that like, um, what's the phrase? I don't need to be so scientific with it, but the not the sense of loss. The what is it that's really particular to borderline? It's like
Abandonment?
uh, abandonment. Yeah, the fear of abandonment. I feel like that will kick in and be like, oh, you deserve better. Oh, I'm not good. Like that's how I'm afraid the conversation will go. Even though they've grown a lot, I still have those fears of like, one, if I say that, maybe this part of them will kick in, and the other fear is that they'll blow up on me and be like, how could you say that it's unfair whenever you do all these things and I do all these things? And to me, I'm like, well, I feel like I do all these things and you do all these things. And then I feel like nothing productive will happen. So I just have bottled it up and I haven't really mentioned about it.
So, and what does it feel like to say that out loud?
Scary.
Yeah. What's this conversation like for you?
Uncomfortable.
And why is that? What's uncomfortable about it?
I think what's uncomfortable about it is that I'm able to freely admit it, or not, maybe not freely, but I'm able to admit it to you and whoever else is watching, but I can't talk about it to one person that I really care about.
Yeah, right. It sounds so. I'm gonna share a couple of just observations. The first is, Leo, you take a lot of responsibility for protecting what is in Alex's head. I don't know if this kind of makes sense, but like,
no, I think that strikes true to me. Yeah.
How so?
I feel like a lot of to me, it does feel like a lot of the responsibility has been on me, because whenever parts of their, the negative parts of their borderline have come up, I've always been like, I need to fix this. Like, this is my problem and I can fix it, because right now they're not in a state to fix it. So I need to be the one. And
what happens when the state goes away?
When the state goes away, we talk about it for a little bit, but it always feels slightly unresolved.
I think it's very unresolved. So let me just toss this back at you, okay?
Okay.
So like, because like, here's what I'm saying. What I'm hearing is that y'all will talk about like your frustrations if it is part of the communication of problem solving around a particular challenge. Right? So if you guys are in the middle of a conflict, you can articulate that, hey, this feels unfair to me. And then it's totally fine. Right? Like, y'all have you're developing a healthy conflict resolution communication. She comes to you and she says, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm frustrated with. You respond with, this is my perspective. This is what I'm frustrated with. You guys kind of solve the conflict. And then you kind of move on. Fair?
Yeah.
But the problem is that, like, you tone it down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then the problem is you can never talk about that outside of the conflict. You can't bring it up after. So whatever small amount of resentment is left, because if you bring it up again, like, you're going to trigger her BPD. She's going to feel attacked. She's going to get pissed at you. She's going to feel like it's unfair. And then she's going to make you feel like it's your fault. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty true. And just as like a short aside to that, like, there have been times when we've had a particular discussion where we couldn't resolve it. And I was like, hey, can we talk about this in a couple of days? And we would agree, like, yeah, let's talk about it in a couple of days. And then we would be perfectly normal and fine. And then we would just never talk about it again. Yeah. It was like it resolved on its own, but did it really? Like, that's kind of how it felt sometimes.
Yeah, so I think Leo, you're in kind of a tricky situation, because I don't hear you assigning any blame to your partner. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Right, so I see a strong emotional reaction in you. Like, what are you feeling right now when I say that?
I don't know. It's a very, like, it's a feeling I can't really pinpoint. It's
Is it a good feeling or a bad feeling?
No, it's a bad feeling. Maybe slightly cathartic, but
Yep. Right. So what's it like to be in a relationship where you can't assign any blame to your partner?
uh, it's difficult. It feels like there's a lot of weight. Um, but it feels like I've assigned that weight to myself, so I need to figure it out.
Right. Exactly. Right. So you assigned you picked up the weight, therefore you have the responsibility of carrying the weight. Right. You see, even there, you're taking the responsibility 100%. You see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the next thing. So here's how it feels. Let me ask you, why don't you assign blame to your partner?
Um, I think it's because so I have a hard time. Maybe this is normal with people in relationships like mine. I have a hard time if even if there is, I don't even know if there is something to separate. I have a really hard time separating their borderline personality disorder and their personality. Um, I'm not sure if it's one and the same or if they are two different things. Because, I mean, it's two different states of mind, certainly. But um, the reason why it's hard for me to maybe assign blame is because they've had an extremely unfair life. Um, and they've had to take so much responsibility and blame from so many other people in their life. And it's like maybe I need to be the one in their life that takes everything for them, like takes everything on my own, because maybe that's what they need in a partner. Maybe they need someone who can, mess up, or feel like they messed up, and then take that responsibility on their own and fix it. Maybe that's what they need, but I don't know.
Yeah. So let me ask you, if you carry all the responsibility and you protect this person from blame and you help them out and you're supportive, you will be a good boyfriend.
Yeah,
Do you want to be a good boyfriend?
yeah.
Do good boyfriends blame their partner for shit when their partner has a history of abuse, toxicity, and BPD?
No.
No, of course not. Right?
Yeah.
Any thoughts, questions?
Um, no, I don't think so.
Okay, how
Like
are
I'm
we
just
doing?
kind of, I'm good. I think it's just, I'm just feeling like a big like bundle in my chest that I feel like is about to like come out. So maybe I need to sit with it for a bit while you do your talk with Alex.
Yeah, let's swap. So
Yeah.
apologies to kind of leave you hanging there, but let's kind of get her perspective.
Okay. Yeah. No
And
problem.
I think you did fantastic, Leo. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I think you really capture a lot of what we see is, the desire to be good and nice and perfect and be what your partner needs can sometimes cause you a lot of hurt and frustration, which you're not allowed to feel because that would make you a bad boyfriend. Right?
Yeah.
Because they've got like the reason that they're behaving in ways that hurt you and are unfair is because of the BPD, and you can't blame them for having BPD. It's not their fault. They didn't ask for it. So it can feel really hard to blame someone because they didn't, it's not fair.
Yeah.
So now you're kind of stuck in the situation where if you try to be fair, it's unfair.
Yeah.
So let's talk to Alex if you're okay with it. If you've got questions or whatever, we can answer those. But otherwise, I'd love to speak to her.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Let me go get them.
And Leo, do y'all have headphones or anything? I think when both y'all are together, it's fine. But we're getting my voice through your mic.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Hold on. 1 second. I need to troubleshoot this. So the headphone jack on my laptop is like screwed up, so I have to kind of mess with it a little.
Thank you.
Oh, I should have figured this out earlier.
It's okay. If you can't figure it out, it's not the end of the world.
Oh, almost done. Okay. Okay.
Got that?
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Is it unmuted? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hi,
Hey, Alex, how are you?
I'm good.
So tell me a little. We just talked to Leo for a little bit. We got one perspective. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how y'all's relationship started and how it progressed and where it is now. Can we start with how it started?
We've known each other since high school. We didn't really get to know each other until our senior year. We had all of our classes together. So we saw each other basically all day, every single day. When COVID happened, we lost touch due to, some other things we both had going on in our lives. And we reconnected a couple years ago, my sophomore year in college. I was having issues with socializing, and I had made a tweet about it, and he messaged me and was like, "Hey, I'm going through some stuff too. Do you want to reconnect next time you're back in our hometown? Do you want to hang out?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." So we started hanging out. I go to school an hour and a half away from our hometown. He would drive up and visit me, which I always thought was super sweet of him. I would drive back home and visit. And it just kind of snowballed, and now we live together. So
Wow. Okay. So it sounds like y'all sort of started out so it sounds like y'all were friends in high school?
Yeah.
And then y'all COVID was isolating for everyone, and then he responded to a tweet of yours. And how long have y'all been together?
It'll be 2 years this November.
Okay. And so you guys kind of, and then did y'all start, so were y'all friends when you kind of reconnected, or did y'all go pretty quickly to dating?
We were friends. I didn't want to jump into anything, especially because at the time I was going through therapy and dealing with a lot of mental health stuff because college was hard. Moving into going to classes in person was difficult because I started college online. And I was very open about that. I was like, I'm going through a lot, so we can hang out, we can talk about the perspective of dating, but I just want to reconnect and get to know our new selves because so much can change in 2 years from high school to college.
Sure. And how long would you say that you were friends before y'all started dating?
Around 6 months to a year. We did spend a lot of time just talking, hanging out, and we had been friends since we were 14. So from freshman year of high school to senior year, and then that 2 years of isolation, and then we spent a lot of time kind of getting to catch up and know each other better.
So 2 years of isolation. So when did y'all reconnect?
It was, I think, either right when my sophomore year started or right before.
Sophomore year of
college.
And what year of college are you in now?
I'm finishing up my 4th year. So I'm about to graduate. Yeah.
So sophomore year of college. So you guys were friends basically through your sophomore year. And then you've been dating through your junior and senior year.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your relationship like when y'all first started dating?
It was very it seemed very much like honeymoon phase type. Because we were so far apart, it was well, not too far, it was only an hour and a half, but he would visit once a week, but we did spend a lot of time playing video games together, talking to each other. He'd help me with a lot of studying, so I would explain physics and all kinds of crazy concepts to him. And that was pretty much it. We did a lot of talking, a lot of when he would come up to visit, hanging out around the campus and things like that.
Okay. And did you guys have conflict and stuff at that point, or not so much because it was the honeymoon phase?
We didn't have much. The only time conflicts really arose was when we wouldn't get a lot of time to talk if I was having finals or if he was working constantly. We would both get a little frustrated at being apart. Um, and we were just kind of like sad and frustrated. So it would create a little bit of conflict when we would see each other again.
What would that look like?
Um, I would be a little frustrated and I would maybe be a little short-tempered more than usual. Not that I'm naturally very short-tempered.
Sure.
And he would kind of like cling and he didn't really want to talk. He just wanted to like lay in bed and he just didn't want to do much of anything besides just be like attached to me, if that makes sense. Which would be a little frustrating for me because I was completely independent. And
yeah, I that sounds really interesting. Can you tell me more about that?
When we would be like separated or whatever, when we would, see each other again, Leo would be very much like, I don't want to say cuddly because cuddly is not necessarily bad. But he didn't want to, like if I wanted to go out and get food, he didn't want to. He just wanted to lay in bed like right next to me in my dorm room. Or if I needed to study, he just had to be right with me. I couldn't really study because he just wanted to like be at my hip, which isn't bad, but it was frustrating at times.
What was frustrating about it?
I felt kind of like stuck because I usually had things to do and we would, run errands I needed to do together, or he would walk with me to class and then he'd go around the town or see some of his friends that go to school with me. And we couldn't do any of that because he didn't want to go anywhere. He felt like it was interrupting time between us, which to me, I was like, no, we're still spending time together, but I can't really put everything I have to do on hold right now. I couldn't really get any studying done. I couldn't, I lived with roommates, I had friends, so that was always like, they didn't like all the, snuggly like up against each other. I was like, we can sit and like hang out, but I don't want to make my roommates uncomfortable.
I see. So you guys have different perspectives on PDA?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
It's since been discussed since we started dating. It's been hashed out. I'm a little uncomfortable with PDA, especially if it's, when I lived in dorms, it was with my roommates, out in public, like going somewhere, doing errands or whatever. I was never the kind of person, I'm cool, I like to hold hands, things like that, but Leo would want to be like on top of me. And it's like, I can't, that's a little bit uncomfortable. It's weird. My parents were also like that. So that's kind of like, I'd never really liked PDA because my parents would hold hands when walking around the grocery store. My dad would put his arm around my mom, but like the hugging and, the kissing and things like that, I was like, no, this is not, I don't kind of groove with this.
What's your understanding of why he wants to constantly be on top of you?
I never really put a lot of thought into it. He had always said that he just like, physical touch is his love language. And, to me, that's fine. I like holding hands and stuff like that. But if I'm trying to grab groceries, I need to grab my groceries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and what's that like for you to have can I use the word clingy? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
What's it like to have a clingy, you guys call each other boyfriend, girlfriend? What terminology do you, okay. What's it like to have a clingy boyfriend?
It's a little frustrating. I'm a very independent person.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love him. I love spending my time with Leo. But sometimes it becomes like a lot. And I'm a lot better about communicating it now and being like, hey, I do need some time to myself. Or like, I need to kind of, run these errands. I'd like to do them by myself. So that way I can just get it all done in like 20 minutes. But it does stress me out every now and then, especially if he's being extraordinarily kind of clingy, like more than usual. It makes me feel kind of like stuck, like kind of like suffocated, which I've gotten better about communicating, like I've said. I'm very open about being like, hey, this is a lot for me right now. I also have like sensory issues, so constantly being touched sometimes can invoke like sensory overload with me, and I'm very open and like, hey, I can't do this right now.
Okay. And what does so this, it sounds like you guys have talked through a lot of this. And where are y'all now with this?
It's gotten to Leo's very good about asking, especially if I've been really busy. I work in construction, so I do spend a lot of time doing physical things, and he'll ask like, I also don't like hugging people when I'm like sweaty or gross or covered in dirt.
Sure.
He'll be like, hey, do you want to like cuddle? Hey, do you want to like hug? Is it cool if, we go like lay down and like cuddle for a bit? And I'm very open about like, yeah, I'd love to. That sounds great. Or, give me a minute, let me shower or let me calm down. And then absolutely we can.
Okay. So it sounds like y'all have sort of communicated a little bit around, okay, he kind of lets you know, hey, do you want to cuddle? And then you sort of let him know, like, this is what I need to do in order to feel comfortable doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
You guys have figured that out. What are there particular... do you have a sense of what he finds frustrating, if at all, about y'all's relationship?
He is not... I don't want to feel like I'm like blaming him or like directing things at him. There are times when I feel that that things are like not being communicated fully to me.
Like what?
Like when he is frustrated or when something has upset him. He sometimes will get very quiet and very not really communicative about things.
Okay.
Which we have had discussions and I've told him like I can't help you or understand if something is being difficult or if we have a problem if I'm not being told what's going on.
Absolutely. That sounds very frustrating for you. That when he's frustrated, he doesn't say anything about it.
Yeah. I give him space. I try to give him space and understanding, but there are problems that, especially if I feel like it pertains to me or if it's something that I've done, I don't want to feel like it's being hidden from me. I do my best to understand my borderline and behaviors, that there are times I can be inadvertently kind of mean and I don't intend to. And I want him to tell me if I'm hurting his feelings or if I'm being kind of callous or rude. And sometimes he'll like hold those back from me and I can tell he is, but I can't force him to tell me anything.
Can you give us an example of what inadvertently rude from borderline looks like?
I tend to get very like, I have the stereotypical black and white thinking. And for us specifically, it looks like household chores and things like that. If I've noted something that might need to be done, or it happens sometimes if like I'm cooking and I ask for something, I might ask, I'll give a specific example, a scenario that occurred. I was cooking dinner and I asked him, hey, can you grab me the small bowl of, I think it was rice vinegar. Can you grab me the small bowl of rice vinegar on the counter? And he brought me the bottle and I was like, that's not what I told you to get me. I was like, it's the bowl. I told you to grab me the bowl. And afterwards, he told me that I was being kind of rude and kind of callous when I spoke to him. And I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't intend to come off that way. That was just the most straightforward way for me to say it. Because I was a little annoyed and I wanted to give the clearest instructions. I didn't tell you to hand me the bottle. I told you to hand me the small bowl.
Right. You were just being direct and clear in your communication.
Yes.
What's rude about that?
To me, nothing. In my mind, I wasn't being rude. That
Yeah,
was
I mean,
how I grew up communicating. So that to me, that's just like how I talk.
and yeah, I mean, I don't know how to say this, but if I'm like, Alex, can you please pass me my glass of water? And you give me a bottle of water from the pantry. That's not what I asked. Like I don't see how that's rude. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
hmm
Like it's just like, hey, can you get me the bowl of vinegar? What's your understanding of how he perceives that as rude?
Um, I I'm not entirely sure. Um, I prefer to kind of I always let him know if, things like that arise that I'm not intending to be rude or callous to him. But I don't really try to dig deeper into it. Um, I usually just take it at like face value and keep a conscious note that, I should be a little bit gentler when I talk because
How do you,
I might come across rude.
how do you respond when he brings you the bottle instead of the bowl?
Um, I remember just kind of looking at him and I just kind of like made a face and I was like, that's not what I asked you to grab me. Um,
Okay, so you'll say that.
yeah.
Okay. All right. And do y'all have like conflict now?
Like what do you mean?
Do y'all have conflict? Like things that are challenging in your relationship?
Um, Sometimes I feel like I am not being listened to,
Mm-hmm.
um, which, can be pretty frustrating. Um, like if I ask him to maybe do things or if I'm talking about a class or a lab I went to, um, I feel like afterwards it's just like gone. Like I just kind of like spoke to myself the whole time.
Yeah.
Um, and it especially becomes relevant if it's, a week that I'm very busy with like work and school and I can't get things done around the apartment and things will pile up even though I've asked or like texted him like, hey, can you maybe like do the dishes? Or hey, could you clean out the cat's litter box? Um, it frustrates me. Or if I'm talking about some of my friends and he doesn't even remember like their names, it makes me kind of feel almost like silly. Like I feel like I was just talking to myself the whole time.
Okay. And when you get frustrated, what does that look like?
I kind of want to spend time by myself to kind of sort out my thoughts. I don't want to kind of be blindsided by my emotions if I'm upset or frustrated. So I'll let Leo know, like, hey, I kind of need some time by myself right now. Like, I kind of want to think and like sort some stuff out in my head. And then, I'll come and like talk to you because I feel like we should have a conversation about something. And if it's something specific, I'll preface it. I won't just like leave it hanging there for him to like mull over and get anxious. I'll say like, "Hey, I kind of feel like I'm not being listened to sometimes, and I need to sort out my thoughts on this matter for a minute. So I'm gonna take some time by myself and like think it out."
And
Because
how does he respond to that?
he just says, "Okay." He, you know, doesn't really argue with me or have any other like thoughts about it
Okay.
until I like come to him to have a conversation about something.
What's your understanding of what his emotional needs in y'all's relationship is? Like what are his emotional needs?
From what I gather and what he kind of tells me, um, he he I feel like he needs me to be a little more gentle than I would normally be, a lot more the phrase sugar coated is kind of overused, but it's what comes to mind.
Okay.
Um, and I'm absolutely willing to do that, but I don't really know like where the line is because I don't want to baby him. Uh, with things.
And do you feel like you baby him?
Sometimes I do kind of feel like, hey, don't forget you need to pick up your clothes so they can get washed. Hey, don't forget to do this.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of a little frustrating at times.
Just a little?
Well, it is frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of mental responsibility. And where does that frustration go?
I've had conversations with him about it. I have let it go for the most part, not necessarily let it go, because I don't want to have the same conversation a million and one times. So I'll do other things. I'll like do puzzles or, until I can sort out my thoughts and like calm down. And then I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be okay. Like I don't need to work myself up, like raise my blood pressure over this.
Okay. And Alex, do you guys do y'all mostly talk about the conflict in your relationship during conflicts in your relationship?
We try our best to. There are a lot of times when one of us will be overwhelmed by the situation or by our own emotions about things, and it needs to be like, it can't happen at that exact moment.
Sure. Okay. And what would you like him to be doing better or differently in the relationship?
I would just like to know more of like what goes on in his mind. Because I feel like there are issues that might stem from maybe the way I might do something or the way I might kind of not necessarily come across, but speak or something, and he doesn't come to me if it hurts his feelings or if he feels like it's unfair. And I can tell that he doesn't like it, but he won't tell me. Like I can tell that he's become upset, but he won't come to me and let me know.
What's your understanding of why he doesn't tell you? So it sounds like your spidey sense is tingling and you're like, okay, he's upset about something, but he won't say anything. Why not?
I think that I worry that he is afraid, not necessarily of me, but of my borderline.
Okay.
Which was a conversation we had before we started dating. I was like, listen, I do have like borderline. Like it's not me, but it's something that I do deal with. And it's something that we both need to have patience and understanding for because it does affect me. And we do still have conversations periodically about it. But I worry that sometimes he's scared of my borderline and scared of triggering something or triggering me, and him not letting me know something is equally as upsetting. Because
just as triggering, right?
Yeah, because I feel like I'm being like left out of something important.
Right.
I'm being left out of like my own relationship.
Right. And that can really trigger borderline really hard because you're like, something's wrong. I don't know what it is. They won't tell me. Am I fucking everything up? Is everything falling apart? Can get to the top thinking real quick.
Yeah.
And when he does share stuff with you, do you have a sense of what your response is usually like? So if he says, hey, I'm upset about this, or I want to cuddle.
I always try to approach things that he comes to me with like kind of like looking at it objectively. I try to have as much understanding as possible because he's not me. So the way he feels about something, like I can't be like, okay, well that doesn't upset me, so you need to get over it because he isn't me. We're not the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to approach it with understanding, and in doing that, I also try to let him know what goes on in my mind about it without discounting him. as much as I can.
So you say you try to approach him that way. How does it end up looking?
I'm not like 100% sure how it comes up looking. Um, and he's never really told me how I come across in moments like that. So I say I try because I'm not 100% sure. I don't
Okay.
exactly know what's going on in, his mind.
Do you have a sense of if he's critical of you, how you respond to that?
Um, I it's kind of like circumstantial, depending on, what exactly he may be critical or kind of feeling a certain way about. I either get kind of like defensive and maybe a little agitated, or I have gotten in my own head about things and gotten, sad and felt kind of like I'm failing at something, like I'm failing at some part of being a good girlfriend or a good partner.
Okay. You ever go on offense?
I I try not to, but I know that in becoming defensive, sometimes I will become offensive,
Yeah, right. That's
especially if I feel kind of like blindsided and I feel like I'm being like attacked or that like something's going very wrong. My brain just like switches and I get more aggressive than I ever normally would.
okay. And so if you're getting blindsided and sometimes you kind of go, and it sounds like you've, by the way, Alex, it sounds like you've really internalized a lot of what DBT teaches. So huge props to you.
Thank you.
And it sounds like also you've been in a healthy relationship for 2 years for the most part, which is like not easy to do, whether you have borderline or not. Right? Like living in the world that we live in today and being in the circumstances that we're in. And it sounds like you work construction, you're in school, you live with someone who maybe works less than you. Is that fair to
Uh,
say?
I mean, we each do our own things. I wouldn't say that he works less than me
Okay.
because he does work, but um, it really depends on exactly what part you look at. I
Okay.
would say that we work the same amount.
Okay. And if you didn't work the same amount, would you be okay saying that?
I mean, probably
Okay.
yeah.
So kind of going back to, sorry for the tangent. So going back to the, when he does sort of mention something to you and it kind of, sometimes it sounds like it can blindside you and sometimes you kind of go on the offensive, which makes perfect sense. That also has, I mean, it may have something to do with borderline in terms of the intensity of it and the rapidity of the switch, but like that's normal for relationships. Right? Is when someone criticizes you for you to criticize back. I do it in my own relationship. It's something that I struggle with. Um, and so I'm just kind of curious if that's what happens, how do you think that will shape his behavior over time?
I feel like he becomes like almost afraid to say things to me. Like he doesn't really want to bring up anything because he's afraid of, the possibility of me becoming offensive about something.
What about the possibility of you feeling like a bad girlfriend?
I think he also worries about that because when the conflict has been resolved and we've talked about it, sometimes we do need to have a discussion about how things were approached by the other person. So if I become aggressive and kind of mean, he might come to me and say, you were being kind of mean to me. Or I'll notice it myself and I'll say, I'm so sorry I spoke to you in that way. Um, but the same thing happens if I'm like, when you said things, when you like said it like this, and when you brought these things up to me, in the manner that you did, I felt like I was failing, like I was doing something wrong and doing a terrible job at being a girlfriend.
And then if he makes you feel like a terrible girlfriend, how does he feel?
Most likely that I would think that he would feel like a bad boyfriend because if he, tells me I feel like I'm a bad boyfriend, I would feel like I'm kind of being a bad girlfriend. It's
Yeah.
like a double,
Yeah,
a cycle.
absolutely, absolutely. Any questions for me?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anything that you want to add or clarify or comment on or anything like that?
I did kind of want to say this just to like anyone that watches this. If you have borderline, you're not your disorder, like not at all. I'm a minor in psychology. I've taken many abnormal psychology classes, and there are still people who think that, people with borderline are terrible, they're awful people to be around. But you're not a terrible person. Um, you're just a person. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, like you aren't your disorder.
Beautifully said, Alex. And I think you're doing a really awesome job of destigmatizing that by talking about your relationship here. Because I certainly we're about to call Leo in and then we'll talk together. But I think that one of the I think one of the most common misconceptions is that all of the problems in borderline, oh wow, the sun came out, have to do with borderline, but they don't. I think a lot of these are this is just life. Like, and the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, which I think you were a great advertisement for, is that people with borderline can get better. And I think that you can have a relatively stable relationship that has its fair share of problems, but its fair share of problems. And it can be made more challenging by BPD, to be sure, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a healthy relationship. And more importantly, that someone who chooses to date you cannot be happy and have a healthy relationship. And the good news is it just gets better with time. So it's one of the very few illnesses that, generally speaking, just gets better with time.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for sharing that. You want to call him in?
Yeah, I'll go grab him.
Okay. All righty. All right, so while we're waiting, chat, what do y'all think about the situation? Give me the TLDR. What do y'all think is going on here?
Okay, hello?
Okay.
Do you still want how should we do this? Do you still want the headset on?
No,
or?
I think just take the headset off because there's no way that y'all can both listen if it's the headset, right?
Okay, yeah, well, so I could keep the mic on, but take off the audio. So the audio would come through the laptop, but it might come through the mic too. I'm not sure.
What?
Never mind. We'll just forget.
Don't worry. Okay. You know what I said.
What I do is like either use push to talk or increase your
We can do push to talk. Let me do that. Hold on.
It's maybe a little bit annoying, but that'll fix it. Okay. So, let me know when you're ready.
We're ready.
Okay. So, I'm just curious, like, what do y'all, anything that y'all took away from our individual conversations that you want to share or feel comfortable sharing? Maybe take off push to talk.
That's... Sorry. No, not. We just didn't realize. So I think I think during our conversation, we talked about how during our relationship, like from the beginning until now, that I've felt a certain level of responsibility and like weight carrying throughout like the entire time, and I haven't really attempted to share that weight. I've just been kind of dealing with those responsibilities myself and like making it my responsibility, but never trying to actually work it out with you and just working it out by myself.
What did you hear, Alex?
I heard that, Leo feels like there's kind of like not necessarily uneven sharing of weight, but that, he does, you know, I'm trying to find the right way to word it. Like I was listening, but I'm trying to find the correct way to word it.
Yeah.
That you feel as if the weight has been shared like unevenly between us, and that instead of kind of handing some of it over to me, like I'm visualizing it as kind of like blocks or something. Instead of handing some of it to me, you've just carried it by yourself and kind of just like dealt with it on your own.
So Alex, is that consistent with some of the behavioral stuff that we talked about in terms of the way that Leo acts? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I feel like it makes sense when I think about it. You know, when I mentioned that sometimes, you know, we struggle with like the thoughts and feelings being shared.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense that, you know, you would feel that you are carrying this weight and that you don't. And that's when I see you not necessarily sharing things with me, is because you feel like you have to carry this weight by yourself and kind of just keep it all in and like internalize it.
Is what she said consistent with your experience, Leo?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's... Can I think for a second? How are y'all feeling so far?
I'm good. I think I'm feeling pretty good. I let it,
Okay.
you know, go through. So.
Okay. So now I'll ask y'all, what do y'all think? So first of all, it sounds like y'all have been in a relatively healthy relationship that's moving in the right direction for the better part of 2 years, which is like pretty awesome. I see that y'all keep plants. I see that y'all have a cat. That y'all are kind of like living life kind of together, and you're supporting each other, and each of you seems to be like growing. And so that's great. What do y'all think? What do y'all think needs to improve in your relationship, if anything? Just any thoughts about that?
I think that we have good communication, but I feel like we can work on it. I feel like it can be opened more. It's kind of like a door that's half open or like 3/4 open. It has the room to be opened all the way. And for us to kind of unlock like a final part of understanding between each other, I feel like there's just like a tiny bit that's still just like hidden from one another, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or what do you think, Leo?
I think that what I've been doing about like holding the responsibilities and like holding that weight, I think it's been, in the technical sense, like working for our relationship, and it's been healthy. But I think that just because it's working doesn't mean that it can't be better, that it can't be improved. So that maybe instead of those times where I feel like I can't or I shouldn't share, because I'm afraid that something negative will happen, that instead I should just commit and like, you know, share exactly like what I'm thinking or feeling, instead of like holding it all to myself.
Okay. Alex, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. First of all, are you surprised to hear Leo say that?
To say, like, no, I'm not surprised.
So what, you know, he said, so here's what I heard, that he's afraid of your reaction. And are you surprised to hear that?
No, because I kind of suspected
that's
what was going on. Yeah. Because it's not just something that's happened, you know, between Leo and I. You know, I have had friends who we did not have a very healthy friendship, and that was, you know, something that kind of played a part in the downfall, was that, you know, they would not like the way I did something, but they'd be like, well, no, you'll be mad. And so then nothing ever got fixed because we never had conversations about how we could be better friends to one another. So it's not something that is like new or surprising to me.
And I'm going to kind of point this out. So I also heard Leo say, okay, so sometimes I'm concerned about your reactions, which is part of the reason I don't share. And Leo, what's the solution to that problem?
Sharing anyway.
Yep. And who's responsible for that, Alex? Who is Leo saying needs to fix this problem?
I don't want to say him because it feels like rude of me, but I mean, whoever is, feeling, these strong emotions and has these thoughts should share it, I guess.
That's what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Leo, what are you doing there?
Oh, I didn't know the answer to that question either, but I was like, oh, but the question wasn't asked to me. So I also wouldn't know the answer to that. I wouldn't know whether to say me or Alex, or maybe
Well,
both.
so I'm hearing pretty clearly that you're saying, okay, I need to share anyway. Right? So I'm hearing you take responsibility. You're taking 100% responsibility. Because you're not saying that she needs to do anything different. Right? That's the problem. So here's what I would, so just to share, and any thoughts about this so far? Are y'all okay with this? Are we making you feel weird, bad?
No, I think it's just, I think you've been making me realize that I say certain things that imply something within myself, and I don't realize that I'm making those, like, I don't know the word for it, but I don't realize what I'm saying until you explain what I'm saying.
Right. So that's normal, by the way. Okay. So it's normal to not, for our brains to articulate what we feel without conscious understanding. Because we don't consciously think about words before we use them. Words actually come from our unconscious mind. That's just, we speak fast and we don't have time to process and check everything that we say. So is it okay if I share some thoughts with y'all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
First thing is, it's fascinating to hear how different y'all's perceptions of your relationship are. So when I ask y'all like how y'all got together and what that story is like, y'all tell completely different stories. And I think it's endearing. I mean, hopefully y'all can, if y'all want, I wouldn't even recommend that you watch each other's thing. I think you should communicate with each other instead of watching it. But if y'all do, I hope you can do so with it. It's not bad or anything. I think it's actually, like, I find it endearing that, and I think it has to do with a lot of I think it's kind of telling because basically, like, Leo conceives y'all's relationship is starting years before Alex sort of, or at least share what she chose to share. So I'm sure that she also understands, that it started earlier, but it's just interesting how y'all choose to share. And that could have something to do with also Leo's familiar with our content. And like, it's fucking weird to share parts of y'all's relationship if this is new to Alex, because that's what we do here is we share stuff that we don't. And as Leo said at one point, I can tell this to you in the internet, but I can't say it to Alex. Which is something that Alex absolutely picked up on, right? So now I think that the good news is that I think both of y'all have a handle on like what the problem is, which is that Alex notices that sometimes you kind of shut down and that you don't share particular things, and she like knows something is wrong, but then Leo feels like, okay, I can't say anything. And why can't you say stuff, Leo?
Because I'm afraid of the consequence.
Right. And what are the two consequences you're worried about?
That I'm wrong and that like what Alex's reaction might be.
Okay. And Alex, is that surprising to you that Leo is afraid of your reaction?
Being afraid of my reaction, no. I'm a little surprised by not wanting to say something because you feel like you're going to be wrong. That is a little surprising to me, but
yeah. So and then I think here's what I would say. I think that should Leo do a better job of articulating when he's upset about something? Absolutely. But I think we also have to understand that the reason he is afraid of your reactions, Alex, is because of your reactions. So as long as you go on offense when he goes on offense, he's not going to go on offense anymore, right? Or even if you become defensive. And this is where the real challenge here is that we understand that it's BPD, but the damage that BPD causes when BPD takes over is like still, there's a lot of understanding, there's a lot of forgiveness, there's a lot of love and compassion, but it still hurts. And I'm getting the sense that Leo's behavior has been heavily shaped by something about the way that you react. The other thing that goes on is that when he criticizes you, you feel like a bad girlfriend, which makes sense. That's why he's criticizing you, right? Because he's unhappy with something that you're doing. But then this circles back around and screws you, Leo, because when you make her feel like a bad girlfriend, you become a bad boyfriend. And the last thing that, in fact, everything that you strive to be is a good, supportive boyfriend for a partner who has BPD, right? You're trying so hard to be helpful and supportive that you can't, because of the way that she reacts. And Alex, what are you seeing with Leo right now?
He's, it's okay. He's, not, I don't know, he's sad. He seems, kind of, there's a lot of emotions.
Yeah, right? So this is the other thing. Y'all need to stop being mind readers. Like, I don't know that, I think there's good emotion in Leo right now. Leo, do you know what you're feeling?
Yeah, I think it just really, it struck true when you said that, like, all I really want is to just be a good boyfriend, like, be understanding. And I think you just verbalize that, and that's just, like, what I've been trying, like, that really is, like, what it all comes back to.
And what's making that hard, Leo?
I don't know the answer. I don't know, actually.
Yeah, so this is where the answer is both of you are making it hard. So like this stuff about, so and I think basically, and this, by the way, this is super common in relationships with BPD, or not just BPD, any kind of diagnosable illness, not even mental illness. We see this in cancer, we see this in all kinds of things, where we have these ideas of like who we are, is like we want to be supportive partners. But I get the sense that, how does it feel when she touches you, Leo?
I mean, comforting, but also, like, again, I think this is also going back to, like, I need to fix my emotions myself. Like, I need to take my deep breaths. So, I don't know.
Yeah, right? So comforting, but you want to be able to handle it without her touching you?
Yeah.
Right? And Alex, what do you think about that?
I understand. It still makes me feel kind of bad that because I want to comfort him, but I also fully understand that like he wants to deal with it himself, or he feels like he should.
Yeah, I mean, so I would, if I were in your shoes, I would be really confused, because you kind of told us, and now it's, if it's okay with y'all, like, I think there's a presumption that I'm going to reference things that we've spoken individually, right? There's not like I don't think you guys can decide whether you want to watch each other's things or not, but like, so like, cause you were kind of saying that like with this whole PDA thing, like sometimes he's like, physically, like touch is really important to him. And here he is feeling something emotional and you're touching him and he's like, nah. So I think there's a couple of other things going on. So let's start high level. Very common for the reactions of BPD to shape all of y'all's reactions. So here's what we need to understand. When we're dealing with BPD, there are 3 people in the relationship. There's Leo. There's Alex with BPD and Alex without BPD. And the problem is that, and this is where I think Leo feels really conflicted, right? Leo, you're fucking stuck, bro. Because you're unhappy about something, but you can't tell her because of the way that she's going to react. And that makes you a bad boyfriend and all that kind of stuff because you're compassionate. She's got PPD and like, you know, but I think you're kind of screwed because what's going on here is that you are treating healthy Alex based on the script that you've developed with unhealthy Alex. Right? Because you don't know which one, and that's normal, by the way, because, you know, she's not really two people. She's one person. And so it's kind of shaping the way that you interact with her. I think there's a couple of other things that are really going on. One is, and this may sound confusing for you, Alex, completely fine. This is a little bit more for Leo. Bro, like, so she perceives that you're kind of like physically clingy and she's kind of confused and you just want to like lay in bed and not go out and do stuff. Does that surprise you at all, Leo?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So I think something that's going on here is that you feel like some things are unfair. And I get the sense that when I heard her say that you say that love is your, touch is your love language. You said something like that, right? Right. Is that accurate, Leo?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't thought about my love language in a little bit, but yeah, I think so.
When we like very first started dating.
So I get the sense, just for you to understand, Leo, when you can't articulate your feelings to her and when you can't get that sense of fairness or connection or reciprocity or whatever, it can like manifest in other ways, like touching. It's not that touch is necessarily your love language. I think it's the substitute for all of the other stuff. Which is also what's kind of confusing for you, Alex, because I think that he doesn't have a way to get across other things. Because if he's terrified that you're going to get angry or feel like a terrible girlfriend and he can't say something to you, there's an emotional need there that needs to be fixed. And what does he have left? Just hold me. Let's cuddle. Let's touch. Right? Because then that sort of solves that problem without ever engaging in dialogue. But it doesn't really solve the problem. It just sort of fits the emotional need. Now, I'm going to ask y'all, this may make no sense to either of y'all because I'm sort of trying to connect two disparate perspectives, and each of you is missing half of the puzzle. The only ones who's going to understand is Twitch, hopefully. But do y'all get what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I understand.
What are y'all hearing or understanding?
That whenever we have like whenever we would have issues or something that I couldn't communicate, that instead I would just be like, I need this to be better, and the way for it to be better is like, let's hold each other, let's be close,
right?
Because that like fixes it in that moment, but it doesn't really fix it beyond that.
And Alex, what did you take away from that?
Very much the same thing, that, you know, when due to Leo kind of feeling afraid of my reactions or, you know, make me feel like a bad girlfriend, he kind of steps back from verbally communicating things, and, you know, to fix things, he just wants to, you know, touch and to hold, and, you know, that doesn't really fix it all in the end because it's just in that moment.
And I think the key thing for you to take away from this is that some of your frustration around his clinginess, I think it's important for you to, in that equation, it's not just about the physicality. That is his substitute for the stuff that you know he's not telling you. Which is why you're like, I don't understand like why we're doing this all the time. Those two things are connected. Does that kind of make sense? So going couple of, yeah, I mean, I want to say going forward, the biggest thing that I would strongly recommend that y'all do is to really understand that both of y'all have responsibility around this communication. So, Leo, you're not going to be able to, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if you criticize her, she feels terrible, she feels like a bad girlfriend, and you feel like a bad boyfriend. What is the result of you trying to communicate to her? Where do we end up?
I don't know if I understand the question.
Okay, so if you communicate to her, hey, I'm upset with you about this, you're afraid that she's going to feel like a bad girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
Fear of abandonment, whatever we want to call it. So then she ends up feeling like a bad girlfriend. And if you see she feels like a bad girlfriend, she gets really sad, starts crying, whatever, who knows? And then you feel like a bad boyfriend, right?
Yeah.
So the key thing to take away is that when you communicate something that you are unhappy about, where does that leave y'all? It leaves her feeling like a shitty girlfriend and you feeling like a shitty boyfriend, which is why you don't do it. Right? So if you try to force yourself to communicate, it's not going to work unless that dynamic at the end gets fixed. So this is where, Alex, you need to get better at handling his unhappiness. And I'm not saying it's not hard for you. And this is where I would say, like, one of the most difficult things that I see is when people have BPD in these relationships, y'all stop. And it's normal, right? Because things end bad. So what do we do as human beings? If we get burned by a hot pan, we don't touch the hot pan again. This is what's happened to y'all. Why don't y'all talk? You fucking know that he's upset about something. And you're like, tell me what's wrong. And you're like, I can't tell you. Right? You can't. It's my responsibility, my problem, which, by the way, the nagging doesn't help, Alex. Right? Because here he is taking all the responsibility, and here you are blaming him. And I say that lightly. Hopefully y'all don't take that the wrong way. And well, let me be clear. That's normal in a relationship. I think the problem is that the BPD does not allow y'all to talk about things normally. And so the most important thing is that y'all need to be able to bruise each other a little bit. Sorry for the term, but like, you need to be able to upset each other. You can't be afraid of upsetting each other. And then y'all need to develop confidence and faith in damage control. Because right now, y'all are like trying to dance around each other. Right? You're so worried about what the other person is feeling that you never communicate, and you start to like do all this like with these weird mental gymnastics instead of like actually talking about it, because communication is hard, and it is, but that's what y'all need to learn basically. Right? Is that you've got to be able to say stuff that upsets you, and you've got to be able to hear it. And I know it's hard without BPD taking control. And even if it does take control, you've got to really like do solid damage control afterward. The other thing that I would strongly recommend, which is really important, is that y'all need to talk about this stuff. I think you do a really good job at conflict resolution. It sounds like you guys have leveled that shit up, way up. But being able to evoke conflict is hard, because then things get harmonious. And then resentment builds up if it was never fully addressed. So what that's going to probably be perceived as is, Leo, you've got to pick fights. And Alex, he's going to be picking fights. But it's not picking fights. That's what it's going to feel like to both of you. But you got to be able to like get to the bottom of that resentment and stuff like that. And by the way, the other thing, this big pile of resentment, which you guys are going to need to work through, is, Alex, are y'all in love?
Yeah.
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 How long have you been in love with Leo? I hate to put you on the spot. Maybe I should not. You don't have to answer that. Okay. You can't answer it if you want to.
I think I've been in love with Leo since we reconnected after COVID. I definitely think that was when I was like, yeah, this
totally
got
it. Leo, how long have you been in love with Alex?
How long is it now? Like 3-4 years ago, like during, last year of high school before COVID happened.
Right? This needs to be resolved. So I think this is a deep, this clinginess, by the way, is coming from this. He's been loving you way longer than you've loved him. And that's okay. You guys don't have to start out. And so I think that like Leo's got like, he's like, yeah, like I think he's wanted to hold your hand and more than that. I don't mean sexually. I just mean in terms of connection. He's wanted it. And so there's been like built up hunger, which until y'all realize that that's normal. That's okay. Like, it's okay to have her, and not everyone falls in love at the same time. What matters is that y'all are in love now and you're in a relationship now. But like that, you get what I mean? Like, Leo, like you've been hurting for this for a long time, and you're trying to make up for lost time. And there's, I don't know if you get that, but she feels, that hunger that he gets, and you're like, why is he wanting this? It's because he's wanted it for a really long time. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I got that perception of talking to both of you.
Yeah, it makes sense. I never really, I never understood that about myself. I guess that's what you guys were talking about, but I've never understood myself like that, but it makes sense to hear it.
Yeah. And so I think you've loved her for a long time, and there's probably some amount of hurt, which is not your fault, Alex, because anytime we love someone and they don't love us back, it hurts. And it's so confusing because now y'all are in love, so you don't want to like blame her for that. And it's not really her fault, but you still have to work through those feelings of and I think there's that thing is it's bleeding out, Leo, into some of y'all's interactions. Thoughts, questions?
I think that, I feel that there was a lot of clarifying, like even just things that I had kind of had suspicions about that were kind of brought into the open air. It still feels very like it's like wiping away like a foggy window. Like I kind of knew it was on the other side,
Yeah.
but now I can completely see it.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said, Alex, because I think I think this guy's you got the fog in your window is in y'all's relationship. I think for him it's been internal. I don't know if Leo really understood what this relationship has been like for him, and not in a bad way by any means. The last thing that I'll leave you with is that, Leo, you're trying so hard to protect her from feeling like a bad girlfriend, but you're not giving her the opportunity to be a good girlfriend. So you have to give her that opportunity. And when he gives it to you, Alex, like BPD will feel like, oh my God, I'm a bad girlfriend, but you're not. That's a chance for you to really be a good girlfriend. And the beautiful thing is that if he criticizes you, you feel like a bad girlfriend, he feels like a bad boyfriend for making you feel like a bad girlfriend. That can be reversed. So if he asks you to step up and you step up, you will feel like a good girlfriend and he will feel loved. And then it like the same, you guys can flip it, but it ain't going to be easy.
Yeah, I think I've understood about myself that a lot of the conflict has been internal, like just me.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I've thought about like how I can fix this, like whenever like I've considered like therapy for myself, but I never once thought like, oh, we need like a couples therapist or anything. That never even crossed my mind. It was always like, I think I need someone to help me unwind like a knot that's been in me, and that knot started way before I fell in love with Alex. That knot has been there since from childhood, whatever, like everything else that I wouldn't be able to explain now, right? But I think it's been a knot that I've had for a long time, especially with the subject of love in general, that I feel like I just need, like, I don't know, like I need to be able to unwind my internal self.
So I think Alex is a walking testament to the benefits of working on yourself in a very intentional way. And I think you and everyone else who's listening should seriously consider engaging in therapy. I think it's a great idea. Couples counseling, if y'all feel like it, go for it. I think with the people that y'all are, I think you would make very good use of it. Y'all have come such a long way just with the two of y'all. And if things do get to a point where y'all, you can engage it now, or if y'all are having trouble in the future, I would not hesitate to engage in a couples therapist or individual therapist or whatever. All I know, like, I really think y'all are fantastic, and I'm really rooting for you. That's really the main takeaway. And it's y'all are like ships crossing in the night. You know, both of y'all are just maneuvering a little bit around of each other because you're afraid of how the other person is going to react. And both of y'all are trying so hard to be the perfect partner. And you're trying to protect the other person. But in doing so, each of you is playing kind of like this solo game. And I think Alex sort of is a little bit more aware of it because she asks you to open up more and you don't. But you've got to understand, Alex, that whether he opens up or not is not just on him. It also has to do with your reactions. And we're not blaming you for having BPD, but you still have to, you know, fix whatever BPD causes. And then you can get angry with yourself and all that good stuff. But any kind of last thoughts or questions before we wrap up for the day?
I guess I just want to say I really appreciate like everything that you do. I think this was a really cool like opportunity for everyone. So I'm really glad to have been able to that we were able to talk to you about everything.
Right back at you. So I appreciate your appreciation, and also like I hope y'all understand that I can't do this without you. Literally, I cannot do this without you. And I think especially this relationship, because just like you said, Alex, there's such a stigma against BPD. It gets so stigmatized, especially in the media, like the crazy girl. It's always a woman, by the way, which is another interesting thing. The majority of women have BPD, but I mean, sorry, the majority of people with BPD are women, but that was bad.
Playing into the stigma.
Anyway, so I think that it's like, it's really sad because I actually see it clinically very good outcomes with people with BPD, but people don't realize that. And it can feel just so powerful and overwhelming. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, y'all are both like lovely people, and I think everyone's rooting for you. And it's a challenge, but as we learned from Leo today, like you can have other challenges. Is that the cat? Everyone wants to know what the cat's name is.
You want to see the cat?
Yeah,
Jinx.
let's see the cat, dude. This is our.
Yeah, her name is Jinx. We took her. She's been constipated. We had to take her to the hospital yesterday. It was a really rough day yesterday. But she's better now. She's just being dramatic.
Yeah.
How does a cat get constipated?
I don't know. She was drinking a lot of water. Apparently, the doctor said it's because because of hormonal changes, because she's been in heat. She's too young to get spayed, so.
Okay.
She also only likes cold water, so if the water isn't cold enough, she won't drink it. So.
Interesting. Well, thanks for paying the cat tax. We appreciate it. But seriously, I'm grateful for your appreciation, and thank you all for coming on. I really do hope, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. Because the other thing to keep in mind is that what's going on with y'all is not just BPD. This happens in every relationship where each of you is trying to protect each other, and then you end up taking that responsibility. So thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with school. Good luck with your relationship. Good luck with the cat constipation.
Thank you. We're doing our best. Thank you.
Take care, y'all.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
All righty. That was great. Man, they're so great. So isn't it interesting how their perceptions... Oh, I should let them know. Decide whether you want to watch the one-on-one or just communicate. It's so interesting, right? Like, the stories that they tell are so different. And there's like big stuff. Like this dude has been in love with her for years. And that piles up, right? And even when you're dating the person, so see, this is where like the movies about romance get it wrong. When you're deeply in love with someone and then you end up in a relationship with them, we assume that like now that you're in the relationship, everything is good. You are with the person of your dreams. I'm happy now. No. There is so much piled up resentment and hunger that is built up from unrequited love, which exists in the relationship and spills out in weird and confusing ways. And usually the partner who came late to the table of love is really confused by this because they're like, I don't understand why things are this way. It's because they have loved you for way longer. And that those feelings are there. Yeah, so I strongly encourage y'all. So, everyone says that relationships are about communication. They're like, communication. You ask some like 80-year-old couple, right? What's the secret to being married for 50 years, 56 years, 62 years? They're like, it's communication. But then no one's like, here is how you communicate. This is what communication looks like. Everyone thinks that they're doing a good job at communication, or even you suck at communication, but you don't know how to do it differently. And so, like, this is what's challenging, is that, like, it's not just like, okay, I just need to communicate better. But, like, what does that look like? Right? I just need to be better at life. Well, what does that look like? Like, how do you do that? What are the actions that you take? So here's what I would recommend. Number 1, understand what you are feeling instead of bludgeoning yourself. So frequently what makes communication hard is that we have internal conflict. And what we end up doing is one part of the internal conflict wins. And then we listen to that part, and that part starts taking care of things. But the problem with that is that there is 50% of you or 49% of you that is still unsatisfied. And if you want to have healthy communication, that part needs to get a say too. So even if you choose to do one thing instead of another thing, articulate both sides and articulate the struggle to your partner. Hey, on the one hand, I trust you and I don't believe that you're going to cheat on me. At the same time, it makes me deeply uncomfortable for you to go on a platonic camping trip with someone, with your ex. Right? There's a part of me that doesn't feel good about that. And I would never do that to you, because I would never want to put you in a situation where you would even have to worry about it. And I can both be worried about it because I'm human and also trust you. The two don't have to go. It's not like one or the other. But the problem is that usually what happens is anytime we have an internal conflict, one part of it wins, and that's all we communicate. So first thing that you should learn to communicate is the part of you that you didn't listen to. Second thing with communication, you got to stop playing 5D chess. It ends up being you got to stop being 5-head with your communication. When you try to be super 5-head or 6-head, you end up being 0-head or 1-head. And what that means practically is that we sometimes communicate to maneuver around someone's responses. If I say this, they will feel bad. I don't want them to feel bad, so I'm not going to say it. And if I don't say it, I will feel bad because it will build up resentment because I'm not sharing what I'm worried about or what I'm frustrated by or what this person is doing that hurts me. So in order to protect them from feeling bad, you just pile on the resentment yourself. And then what happens is it starts leaking out in other ways, passive aggressive. Sometimes we'll even do things like we'll ask our partner to do stuff that is like kind of annoying, and then when they say no, we kind of blow up at them. We're disproportionate with our frustration. Since I can't be pissed off about this because that would make me a bad boyfriend or girlfriend, because I'm not allowed to be jealous because I trust my partner. Instead, I'm going to bottle up that frustration, and it's going to come out because I asked you to order pasta without cheese on top, and you got cheese on top, and now I'm pissed. Disproportionate frustration over here comes from a lack of communication. And that lack of communication is because you try to protect them from the response of your communication. At that point, you don't have a partner, you have a child. Because the relationship where you are responsible for someone else's feelings is the parent-child relationship, not the partner relationship. Right? You can be authentic. I'm not saying you should be an asshole, but they bear some responsibility for their reactions. Third thing to understand is that if your partner is closed off Do they need to work on communicating better? Absolutely. But if your partner is closed off, there is a good chance the reason they are closed off is because of how you respond when they open up. I don't understand why they don't talk to me. Well, it's because of the way that you respond. That's why human beings stop engaging in a behavior. Right? So what are some examples of this in a heteronormative relationship? Most common example of this when women don't communicate with men is because men go into problem-solving mode. Right? Instead of listening, I'm going to start solving your problems, and then the person doesn't want to communicate with me anymore because that's not what they're looking for. On the flip side, something that's very common for men is when men communicate their emotions, oftentimes we get blamed for it. Or people feel hurt, right? Because if I say I'm unhappy in this relationship, suddenly the person freaks out. And they're like, well, I'm unhappy in this relationship. And they share something that they're upset about, and then like we respond by going on offense. You're criticizing me? Bitch, I will show you what criticism looks like. Right? So there's tons of experiences that men have of opening up emotionally and getting punished for it. So if your partner is not communicating with you, should they work on it? Sure, but you need to really pay attention to the way that you respond to communication. Okay, so that's number 1, 2, and 3. How do you communicate in a relationship? How do you get better? I don't even remember what I said now. Okay, so number 1 is anytime you have an internal conflict and you settle on something and you share that with your partner, you should also represent the other side. Hey, I'm okay moving for the sake of your career. There's a part of me that's really unhappy that we're in this situation because I really enjoy the friends and social life that we've built in this city. Communicate both sides. That's number 1. I forget what number 2 is. Number 3, if your partner does not communicate with you, that is not entirely their fault. The number 1 reason why partners don't communicate with us is because of the way that we respond to their communication. And if we respond in a reinforcing way, they will continue to communicate. If we punish them for communicating with us, which you may say, I'm not punishing anyone. Well, if they're not communicating with you, they're being punished when they try. That's number 3. And then number 2 is, I don't know. What was number 2? What's number 2, chat? Camera keeps going in and out of focus. No, it doesn't. My face keeps going in and out of focus. Oh, yeah. Is that stop playing 5D chess? Okay. So number 2. Thanks, chat. Number 2 is that frequently when we communicate, we are trying to communicate around a particular response. So I'm going to shape my communication because I'm trying to avoid my partner reacting in a particular way. And what you end up doing is you're playing this game all in your head, right? So if you really think about it, it's not quite manipulation, but instead of actually communicating with them, you are running through all these like hypothetical scenarios, and then you give them one option. It's not a real communication. It's a manipulation. Because I'm going to communicate in such a way so that it shapes your behavior in the way that I want. Because if I communicate without doing this, you're going to explode. Or if I communicate without doing this, you're going to get mad at me. Or if I communicate without doing this, you're going to feel bad. And so what we need to start doing is recognize that a part of communication involves making the other person uncomfortable in some way. Sometimes, not all the time, right? Sometimes it can be, I love you, which can also make people uncomfortable, you know, if you don't have a relationship. So instead of playing 5D chess and like going through 15 moves to evoke a particular response, give them a more open communication. Just play regular 2D chess. Don't overthink it. And if they respond badly, get better at managing that conflict and damage control as opposed to prevention. Because when you take a preventive strategy with communication, what that means is that you don't speak. Preventing problems through communication is shutting the hell up. But if we want to be better communicators, we've got to be able to swim in rough seas. Right? You have to be able to say what you authentically feel, have the other person get upset, and then the two of y'all work through it together. So, one thing, if you guys want to learn this stuff, we don't teach specifically this, but a lot of these communication skills we teach in group coaching. So group is the one place where we will help you articulate both sides of the conflict. Right? And you can make a decision about how do you understand both sides of the conflict? How do you articulate them? That's literally what we do in group coaching. There's also elements of this in terms of like, should I speak now? Should I not speak now? And this is where, like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but in a group setting, oftentimes people are worried about taking too much time. And the healthy way to resolve that, which is what we do in group, is not, I'm worried about you taking time, and therefore I'm not going to speak because I'm afraid. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you a way where you are going to take time. If you feel like speaking, speak. And the other person feels comfortable enough to say, hey, is it okay if I have the floor for some time because I have some things that I'd like to share too? Both y'all can openly communicate that, hey, I want to take the podium. It feels uncomfortable to do. Okay, so these kinds of things, like this is why we can't, I mean, sure, I could do a YouTube video about it, and maybe we will at some point. This is why we do interviews like this, because it brings it to life and teaches you all something. But these are skills to be practiced. And the basic problem that we have with Twitch and YouTube is that we can't teach you skills. We can tell you what the skills are, but we cannot build your competence over time on YouTube. We'll teach you stuff. We'll tell you what to do, but then you've got to DIY it. So if y'all are in a situation where like, hey, I need to level up my communication skills. I need to get better at interacting with humans. I need to get better at understanding what I feel and articulate it. And the most important thing is that if you want to be better by it, if you want to be better at it when 2024 rolls around, if you want it to be done by that point, or at least, well on your way, then you should sign up for coaching. We're not saying that you can't learn it anywhere else. The reason that we have these programs is because if you're in them for 12 weeks, like, the progress will be made. That's the real advantage of them. It's not an issue of can you do it without it. It's an issue of when do you want it to be done by. So check it out. Huge shout out to our guests for coming on today and talking about this stuff. I love this. And for those of y'all that are wondering, like, I don't think this is couples therapy. Like, does couples therapy sometimes look like this? Absolutely. But this is just understanding how to articulate what you feel. I do this stuff with my kids, and I ain't their therapist. I'm their dad. I do this stuff with my friends. Part of the problem in society today is that we have outsourced basic life skills to therapy. Like, this is a huge problem. And then what happens is we've got a stigma against therapy. Therapy is a place that you go when you're broken. Well, shit, where are we supposed to learn this stuff otherwise? There's a great study from the state of New York where they taught kids social and emotional skills as a class. And the two are tied together, by the way. And the kids that had the social and emotional skills class, their grades were on average 11 points higher than kids who didn't have that class. 11 points, y'all. That's one letter grade. And so, like, by all means, see a therapist if you want. Go for it. But I think it's a tragedy. I think the problem is, like, not that, and this is the other problem that even therapists face, is that therapists have too much to do because we've got to deal with the clinical stuff. And then, like, the basic problem is someone comes in and says, hey, I'm depressed. And now you're dealing with two problems. You're trying to treat their clinical depression, and you are trying to fix the problem if this person doesn't have social skills and doesn't know how to develop a social network. Why are you isolated? Well, I can't leave the house. I don't know how to make friends. I don't know how to find a romantic partner. And those people are even not to blame because it's not like the world is helping them. Along came online dating, which gave us the promise that, hey, we'll make it easier for you. You don't know how to meet people? Use our app. Pay $5, pay $500. We'll help you out. And people get rejected literally thousands of times, tens of thousands, or even I have seen hundreds of thousands of times more than what you would in real life. They didn't make it easier. They made it more convenient, but actually way harder. Statistically. I've never met a single human being who has asked out 100,000 people on a date. I've never seen that. But you can get through 100,000 people on an online dating app. Right? It's like, it's messed up. And therapists are like overburdened because now the basic problem, this is the other thing to understand. The mind is the only organ of the body that requires other human beings to function properly. So with a cardiologist, your heart doesn't need other humans. The heart functions on its own. It's a muscle. It pumps. The problem with mental health and mental illness is it's the only organ of the body that you cannot fix entirely on your own. Technically, you probably can, but the way that it evolved to be healthy, what is healthy for a mind, involves contact. And so one of the reasons we're sitting with a mental health crisis right now is because the nature of contact has changed. So one of the reasons this is staggering, okay? I recently am doing some research, and I started looking into touch starvation. And I noticed that like people are starved for touch, and it's like so psychologically damaging. It's like these people are like deprived. We're seeing a rise of social anxiety, crippling social anxiety. We're seeing a rise of depression. What's going on here? We're seeing a rise of touch starvation. So I did some research, and I looked into what happens when a human being is starved for touch. It turns out that there's a hormone called oxytocin. And oxytocin is a bonding hormone. It's the hormone that gets released in mothers when they breastfeed. So it forms bonds. And there are some cases of things like tumors and strokes and things like that where people will develop a oxytocin deficiency. And when you have a neurological oxytocin deficiency, it looks exactly like touch starvation. Social anxiety. I do not feel comfortable with these people. Because where does human bonding, what does it mean for humans to bond? It means humans are connected, comfortably connected. That's what a bond is. And you don't have that. Oxytocin deficiency also leads to lethargy and depression. Because being hugged by people releases oxytocin and makes us feel loved and confident and safe and secure and less worried, more able to move out into the world because, hey, look, there are other human beings out in the world who I can count on. The world is not a desolate place. And so I'm seriously starting to believe that half of the problems that we're dealing with as we become more of an electronic society is a subclinical oxytocin deficit. Because clinically, it looks very similar. And hey, what's going on? We're not releasing oxytocin. Because it's the one hormone, like there are a lot of things that you can artificially stimulate. You can stimulate testosterone, you can even supplement it. But touching yourself does not lead to an increase in oxytocin. It's the one thing that you can't get without other people. Social anxiety, depression, low energy levels, insecurity, paranoia, all come from a lack of oxytocin. So when people are saying take oxy pills, so this is really interesting. So they noticed, by the way, that this social bonding and empathy and stuff like that is challenging in people who have schizophrenia. So there were some clinical trials done where people would supplement oxytocin. There was an intranasal oxytocin that they would give people with schizophrenia. Challenge is, it didn't work. Now, the question is, there's a couple of things to consider there. One is, does supplementing oxytocin in the brain of someone with schizophrenia, that may not work, but getting oxytocin in a healthy brain could work. So those are two different brains. So just because it doesn't work for people with schizophrenia doesn't mean that it won't work for you. Second thing that we sort of discovered, though, is that endogenous oxytocin release is very important. So unclear whether getting oxytocin from the outside will help you or not. The good news is that we don't need to get it from the outside. We have a lot of endogenous mechanisms that will release oxytocin, which are very healthy. Most simple of which is hugging. So hug someone. And if y'all are worried about how do I hug someone, can I walk up to people and hug them? No, you can't do that. But if there are people that you know, or you see someone on the street or whatever, like you can start with a fist bump, you can start with a high five, or you can ask someone, hey, do you need a hug? There's also a really interesting study I saw about a year ago that showed that one of the most important things that improves depression is the person who is depressed helping another human being. So basic problem that we have with our conception of mental illness is that if you are mentally ill, someone needs to do something to you. And boy, do the pharmaceutical companies love that conception. Because it's like, hey, you've got a problem. We've got a pill for that. That's the way that you fix it. Something needs to be done to you. You need to be therapized or take this pill or whatever. You're the victim. We need to do stuff to you. But there's research that shows that if you really want to combat mental illness, it's not about other people doing things to you. I mean, it is partially, but it's also that you can do things for other people. That is protective against mental illness. And so if you're struggling with like, hey, I need a hug, like instead of thinking about yourself, which you have every right to do, think about someone else. What can you do for someone else? Who can you offer a hug to? And this is where a lot of y'all may say, but like no one wants a hug. I'm a creep. Everyone calls me a creep. They think I'm a creep. And it's like, well, be a little bit careful about that thinking. I have no doubt that you had a very real and authentic experience that made you believe that. But it doesn't mean that everyone thinks you're a creep. Right? What happens is once you start thinking you're a creep, you stop collecting data. And once you only have two very strong data points that suggest you're a creep and you stop collecting it, you're going to continue believing that because 100% of the evidence suggests this. And that's the real tragedy. The real tragedy is once you start to believe something negative about yourself, you stop collecting data. And so the one thing that will help you change your opinion of yourself is the one thing that you stop engaging in. And that's the hardest thing, is to believe something about yourself and defy that with your actions, which is exactly what needs to be done. In order to succeed, if you believe you're a failure, you have to be stupid. You have to try in spite of being a failure. And the big irony is that is exactly what makes you a success instead of a failure, is to try when you know it is stupid. We're out here five-heading ourselves all the way into depression and being stuck in life. And all you need to do is zero head at some. Stop thinking about it. Just do it, bro. All right. I got to run. Give me just 1 second. Give me a second. Okay. Who are we rating? Thank y'all very much for coming today, by the way. Rate Iron Mouse, done. Oh my god, there's like some weird update layouts beta. Oh my god. Iron Mouse is playing Phasmophobia. GG, noobs. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all. I don't know when we're streaming. We're like streaming a lot this week, I think. So stay tuned. Stay on our socials, and we'll see y'all, I think maybe even tomorrow or day after or something like that. Or maybe we're on a podcast or something. We're doing a lot of stuff this week. So thank y'all very much for coming. Huge shout out to our guests. And take care of yourselves, chat.